Most people see Mordecai as just another lazy park worker who spends his days playing video games and avoiding real work. But here's the thing, while everyone's laughing at his weird adventures, they're completely missing how this Blue Jay actually thinks and operates. We're going to deep dive into Mordecai's mind and examine his intelligence from 3 different angles: how he handles emotions, plans ahead, and solves technical problems. So the real question is figuring out exactly what kind of intelligence he has and how it shows up when things get crazy. By looking at specific episodes where Mordecai has to think his way out of trouble, we're going to discover something pretty shocking about how his brain actually works. But before we continue the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Let me paint you a picture of Mordecai's world. This Blue Jay works at a city park doing basic groundskeeping with his best friend Rigby, a raccoon who makes questionable life choices daily. But here's what makes Mordecai fascinating. He went to art school before ending up at this job, which already tells us something about his past background and potential. Most people see a slacker who plays video games at work, but they're missing the bigger picture of who the character really is. The regular show universe operates on pure chaos. In The Power, Mordecai and Rigby find a magical keyboard that can literally send people to the moon, create bouncy houses out of thin air, and make them fly through space. Most people would completely lose their minds in situations like this, but Mordecai consistently stays grounded, even when reality breaks down around him. When Rigby accidentally sends Skips to the moon, Mordecai immediately recognizes the need to fix their mistake and organize a rescue mission. He doesn't waste time panicking or making excuses. He takes responsibility and creates a plan. Think about what intelligence actually means in a world where songs can become physical beings that terrorize everyone. In This Is My Jam, a catchy tune gets stuck in Rigby's head.
Summertime lovin', baby, why can't you be mine?
Dude!
Gonna head down to the beach, gonna do some beachy things.
Dude!
It's summertime lovin'.
Dude, quit it!
Then literally manifest as a giant dancing cassette tape that won't stop playing music. While everyone else runs away screaming, Mordecai comes up with this strategic solution: fight the annoying song with an even more annoying song. He organizes the entire park staff into a band and writes "Aw Snap" to defeat the musical monster. This shows tactical thinking under pressure that most people completely miss. Mordecai operates in an absurd world, but he can still consistently shows grounded intelligence. While magical keyboards are flying around and cassette tapes are coming to life, he maintains his ability to think logically and solve problems. The evidence shows up at how he handles these surreal plots. He doesn't panic like most characters would. Instead, he adapts quickly and finds practical solutions to impossible situations. This shows how being level-headed in such a chaotic world actually demonstrates remarkable intelligence that goes way beyond traditional measurements. Compare Mordecai to his best friend Rigby, who creates most of their problems through impulsive decisions. Rigby steals the magical keyboard from a wizard, sends random objects to the moon for fun, and gets possessed by earworms. Meanwhile, Mordecai constantly plays cleanup crew, fixing the disasters that Rigby's lack of foresight creates, and this pattern repeats throughout the entire series. Rigby acts without thinking. Mordecai figures out how to solve the resulting chaos. Park setting itself demands a special type of intelligence. Mordecai deals with an explosive gumball machine boss named Benson, who literally turns red with anger and threatens to fire everyone daily. He works beside Pops, an innocent rich man who hands out lollipops instead of money, and lives in complete denial about how the actual world works. There's Skips, an immortal Jedi who knows everything but speaks in riddles, and Muscle Man, who makes inappropriate jokes constantly while somehow being useful in emergencies. Managing relationships with this crew while keeping his job requires serious social and emotional intelligence that most viewers never acknowledge. But here's where things get controversial. Most people dismiss Mordecai because he works a basic job and gets into weird adventures. They see the surface level of chaos and assume everyone involved must be equally scattered. This completely misses how Mordecai navigates impossible situations with remarkable consistency. When reality itself becomes unreliable, staying mentally stable becomes its own form of genius. The fact that he maintains his sanity while everyone around him loses theirs shows incredible mental strength. The art school background adds another layer that people ignore. Mordecai has education and creative training, but he chooses to work at the park. This suggests someone who values friendship and simple pleasures over traditional success makers. That kind of self-awareness and life choice requires emotional intelligence that most people overlook. He could probably get a better job anywhere, but he stays because he cares about the people around him. Living in constant surrealism demands incredible adaptability that most humans don't possess. Normal people would have mental breakdowns if their daily routine included space travel, time manipulation, and supernatural encounters. Mordecai treats these events like minor inconveniences and focuses on practical solutions. When most characters would freeze up or make things worse, he stays calm and thinks his way through problems. This kind of mental flexibility shows intelligence that goes beyond any test score. The regular show universe basically serves as a constant intelligence test disguised as a cartoon chaos. Every episode throws impossible scenarios at the characters to see how they respond. While others panic, blame each other, or make impulsive decisions that create bigger problems, Mordecai consistently demonstrates the kind of practical intelligence that actually matters when everything goes wrong. He proves that real intelligence means problem solving, not just knowing facts. Okay, here's something that'll blow your mind. Mordecai might be the most emotionally intelligent character on regular show, and nobody talks about it. While Rigby's causing drama and Benson's having meltdowns every 5 minutes, Mordecai's out here reading people like open books. Look at Just Friends from season 7. Mordecai gets stuck alone with Margaret after Rigby and Eileen bail for Dawn's martial arts ceremony. This could have been a total disaster, but watch what he does. He notices every single time Margaret feels uncomfortable and immediately adjusts his behavior to make her feel better. When that old chef tries showing them their potential future together, most guys would either freak out or try to make a move. Not Mordecai. He processes all the emotional information and makes the mature decision that they should just stay friends. That's not luck. That's serious emotional intelligence at work. The Thanksgiving special proves this even more. When Mordecai and Rigby accidentally ruin the entire holiday dinner, Mordecai doesn't just focus on fixing the practical problem. He understands that Thanksgiving means something deeper to everyone involved. During the big song contest, he writes lyrics that hit people right in the feelings, talking about how the holiday is about spending time with people you care about. The fact that his song moves an entire audience to tears shows someone who understands human emotions at a sophisticated level. He takes a complete disaster and turns it into something that brings everyone together emotionally. Prankless shows another side of this emotional genius. When Muscle Man accidentally hurts Pops with a prank and decides to quit pranking forever, Mordecai recognizes the emotional complexity of the whole situation. He understands that Muscle Man feels genuinely guilty, but he also sees that the park needs Muscle Man's pranking skills to defend against their rival park. Mordecai doesn't just tell Muscle Man to get over it or dismiss his feelings. Instead, he works with Benson to create a situation where Muscle Man can feel emotionally ready to prank again. That takes real emotional intelligence, understanding what someone needs to feel before they can act. Even in Bet to Be Blonde, when Rigby cheats on their video game bet and Mordecai has to go blonde, we see emotional intelligence in action. Mordecai realizes that Rigby is feeling guilty about cheating, even though Rigby won't admit it. So he pretends to join a blonde cult to create enough pressure that Rigby will confess to the truth. He reads Rigby's emotional state perfectly and designs a situation that will help his friend do the right thing. That's sophisticated emotional manipulation, but used for good reasons. But let's be real. Even emotionally intelligent people mess up badly sometimes. Yes, dude, yes, shows Mordecai at his absolute worst emotionally. He sees Margaret hugging another guy and assumes she's engaged without asking any questions. Then he rebounds by dating CJ while still hung up on Margaret. When the truth comes out, he handles it terribly. He accidentally double books the same movie date with both girls and creates a massive emotional disaster. His emotional intelligence completely fails him here because he's too caught up in his own feelings to read the situation clearly. Dumped at the altar is even more brutal. During Muscle Man's wedding, Mordecai decides to give a speech about soulmates that basically dumps CJ in front of everyone. He's so focused on his own emotional confusion that he completely misses how his words will hurt CJ. She's sitting right there, listening to him wonder if his soulmate might be someone else in the room, and he doesn't even point in her direction. That's emotional intelligence failing spectacularly under pressure. But here's what makes Mordecai special. He learns from these mistakes. His emotional intelligence grows throughout the series. Here's where people really sleep on Mordecai. His strategic thinking is actually brilliant. While everyone else panics or acts impulsively, Mordecai steps back, analyzes the situation, and comes up with plans that actually work. The Brain of Evil from Season 8 shows this perfectly. When Rigby accidentally releases an evil brain that hijacks their dome and flies it into space, most people would completely lose it. But Mordecai stays calm and thinks strategically. He realizes they need to challenge the brain to chess because that's how it was originally defeated. When they lose the game of chess, he doesn't give up. He immediately shifts to plan B. He tricks the brain by pretending to accept defeat. Then he uses a salad bowl to trap it while it's distracted. Finally, he figures out they can use the chessboard as a lid and launch the brain into space. That's multiple layers of strategic thinking happening in real time under extreme pressure. Survival skills really demonstrates his planning abilities. When Mordecai and Rigby get lost in the woods, trying to bring Benson tortillas, Rigby starts panicking and making random decisions. But Mordecai thinks strategically about survival. He remembers Benson's wilderness presentation and applies those concepts systematically. He organizes their use of tortillas as tools, clothing, and shelter. He plans their route, manages the resources, and keeps them alive for what feels like weeks. The fact that they were only gone for a few hours doesn't matter. Mordecai's strategic thinking worked perfectly for the situation they thought they were in. Rigby's graduation day special shows Mordecai's long-term strategic thinking. When Rigby is struggling with his graduation speech, Mordecai could have just written it for him. Instead, he recognizes that Rigby needs to learn how to handle these situations himself. Even when he's mad at Rigby for succeeding, he still shows up with the right drink and the right advice at exactly the right moment. He strategically manages his own emotions to help his friend when it matters most. That's high-level planning that considers both immediate needs and long-term growth. Exit 9B demonstrates Mordecai's tactical genius. When their entire world gets destroyed and everyone's memories are erased, Mordecai doesn't just run around screaming. He analyzes the situation, realizes they need everyone's signatures to stop the freeway, and develops a systematic plan to restore each person's memories. He figures out exactly what triggers each character's needs. Skips needs to remember his lost love. Pops needs a lollipop. Muscle Man needs a "my mom" joke. He's essentially running a complex psychological operation while dodging construction workers and dealing with time travel consequences. The claim that Mordecai has high emotional intelligence holds up because he consistently shows empathy, reads social situations well, and helps others navigate their feelings. His strategic intelligence is equally impressive. He demonstrates long-term thinking and performs well under pressure. The evidence shows someone who can analyze complex problems, develop multi-step solutions, and adapt when circumstances change. His analysis of these situations reveals abilities that go way beyond what you'd expect from a Blue Jay who plays video games at work. Look, let's be real about something. Mordecai might handle crazy situations well, but when it comes to actual book smarts, he's pretty average at best. The show gives us plenty of evidence that academic intelligence isn't his strong suit. Take Brain Eraser from season 2. The episode perfectly shows how Mordecai's lack of critical thinking gets him into trouble. The whole mess starts because he accidentally sees Pops naked and can't handle it mentally. Instead of just dealing with it like a normal person, he lets Rigby convince him to watch some weird anime video called Planet Chasers Starlight Excellent that supposedly erases bad memories. Any person with decent academic reasoning would immediately question this logic. A random video that erases memories? Come on. But Mordecai just goes along with it without any skepticism. He doesn't ask how it works, doesn't consider the consequences, doesn't even think, hey, maybe this sounds too good to be true. He just stares at the screen and lets it completely wipe his mind clean. The results are exactly what you'd expect from such poor decision making. Mordecai becomes a complete zombie, can't remember basic things about his life, and loses all his personality. Rigby has to drag him around like a puppet. For someone who supposedly has decent intelligence, Mordecai showed zero ability to think critically about an obviously suspicious solution to his problems. Then there's the Terror Tales episodes, where Mordecai consistently makes academic level mistakes in his storytelling and reasoning. In Terror Tales of the Park 2, his story about his dead uncle makes basic logical errors. He creates this whole narrative about his uncle coming back from the dead to return $5, but the story structure doesn't really make sense when you think about it. Why would a ghost be concerned about such a small debt? The premise falls apart under any real scrutiny. Throughout the various Terror Tale episodes, Mordecai's stories often rely on cheap plot devices and contradictory logic. He doesn't demonstrate the kind of structured thinking you'd expect from someone with strong academic intelligence. His narratives jump around, use convenient coincidences, and often ignore basic cause and effect relationships. What's interesting is that Mordecai seems to recognize good storytelling when he hears it. He can critique other people's stories, but he can't apply those same analytic skills to his own thinking. This suggests he might have surface level knowledge about narrative structure, but lacks the deeper analytic abilities to consistently apply that knowledge. The pattern is clear. Mordecai tends to accept things at face value without digging deeper. He doesn't ask thorough questions, he doesn't think through the consequences, and often jumps to conclusions based on limited information. These aren't the habits of someone with strong academic intelligence. This doesn't make Mordecai stupid. He's got other kinds of intelligence that help him survive all the weird supernatural stuff that happens, but book smart, academic reasoning, critical thinking skills, the evidence suggests he's pretty average in those areas, and sometimes even below average when he lets his emotions override his judgment. But before I tell you Mordecai's IQ, don't forget to subscribe now, and let's get back to the video. Alright, let's settle this once and for all. After looking at all the evidence from emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, and academic abilities, Mordecai's IQ sits right around 123. That puts him in the borderline gifted range, and honestly, it explains everything about how he operates. An IQ of 123 means you're smarter than about 93% of people, but you're not a genius. You can handle complex problems, read social situations well, and think strategically under pressure, but you'll also make some really dumb mistakes, especially when your emotions get involved. Sound familiar? That's literally Mordecai's entire character. People with IQs in the 120 to 130 range show exactly the traits we see in Mordecai. They're good at emotional regulation, not perfect, but way better than average. Think about how Mordecai stays calm when reality breaks down around him. In The Power, magical keyboards are sending people to the moon, and while everyone else panics, Mordecai immediately organizes a rescue mission for Skips. That's emotional regulation under extreme stress. They also excel at pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Remember the brain of evil? When that evil brain hijacks their dome, Mordecai doesn't just freak out, he recognizes the pattern. The brain was defeated by chess before. so they should try chess again. When that fails, he immediately adapts with backup plans. He tricks the brain, traps it with a salad bowl, and uses the chessboard as a lid. That's multiple layers of strategic thinking happening in real time. The 120 to 130 IQ range also shows adaptive creativity. These people can think outside the box when they need to, but they're not constantly coming up with wild ideas. Mordecai demonstrates this perfectly in This Is My Jam, when a song literally comes to life and terrorizes everyone. His solution is brilliant in its simplicity. Fight the annoying song with an even more annoying song. He organizes the whole park staff into a band to defeat a musical monster. That's creative problem solving that actually works. But here's the key thing about his IQ range. People are smart enough to handle complex situations, but they still make obvious mistakes when emotions cloud their judgment. Yes, dude, yes, shows this perfectly. Mordecai sees Margaret hugging another guy and assumes she's engaged without asking questions. Then he rebounds with CJ while still hung up on Margaret. His intelligence completely fails because he's too emotionally invested to think clearly. That's classic 120 to 130 IQ behavior. Smart enough to solve complex problems, but still human enough to mess up badly when feelings get involved. Compare Mordecai to the other characters and the pattern, and this becomes obvious. Rigby consistently makes impulsive decisions without thinking throughout consequences. He steals magical keyboards from wizards, gets possessed by earworms, and creates disasters that Mordecai has to fix. Rigby's probably sitting around 95 to 105 IQ, average intelligence, but poor impulse control. Pops lives in complete denial about how the world works, hands out lollipops instead of money, and needs constant protection from basic reality. But he's also incredibly wealthy and shows flashes of deep wisdom. Pops might actually be quite intelligent, but his privileged background and childlike personality make it hard to measure. Muscle Man makes inappropriate jokes constantly, but somehow becomes useful in emergencies. He's got street smarts and practical knowledge, but lacks the strategic thinking that we see in Mordecai. He's probably around 110, 115 IQ, above average, but not exceptional. Benson explodes with anger daily and threatens to fire everyone, but he also runs a functioning park and handles administrative duties. He's probably similar to Mordecai intelligence-wise, but his emotional regulation is much worse. The constant stress of managing impossible employees would break most people. Skips is clearly the smartest character. He's immortal, he knows everything, and solves problems that stump everyone else. But he speaks in riddles and lets others figure things out for themselves. Classic high intelligence behavior. Probably 140 plus. IQ. The 123 IQ explains why Mordecai consistently emerges as the problem solver in group situations. He's smart enough to see solutions others miss, emotionally stable enough to stay calm under pressure, and strategic enough to plan multiple steps ahead. But he's not so smart that he becomes arrogant or detached from normal human emotions. The intelligence level also explains his life choices. Mordecai went to art school but chose to work at the park. Someone with 123 IQ has enough self-awareness to value friendship and simple pleasures over traditional success markers. He could probably get a better job anywhere, but he stays because he cares about the people around him. That takes emotional intelligence and life wisdom that goes beyond just being book smart. The academic mistakes we saw in Brain Eraser and Terror Tales episodes makes perfect sense for this IQ range. Smart people can still fall for obvious scams when they're emotionally vulnerable. They can recognize good storytelling in others, but struggle to apply those skills to their own narratives when they're caught up in the moment. Mordecai's 123 IQ makes him the most reliable character in this chaotic world. He's the one who stays grounded when everyone else around him loses their minds. He solves problems that stump others, reads social situations accurately, and adapts to impossible circumstances. But he's still human enough to make relatable mistakes that keep him from being annoyingly perfect. That's exactly what borderline gifted intelligence looks like in real life. Consistently extremely thoughtful behavior with occasionally spectacular failures when emotions take over. What do you think though? Drop a comment and tell me what IQ you'd give Mordecai. Here's something wild that nobody talks about. Mordecai doesn't just solve problems, he basically controls how everyone else reacts when things go wrong. His intelligence is like the invisible force, keeping the whole group from falling apart every single episode. Look at Eileen flat screen. Rigby completely screws up trying to install Eileen's TV and accidentally starts a war with her psycho roommate Joanne. This woman literally steals the TV, hijacks a car, and leads them on an insane chase that ends with her throwing the TV off a bridge. Any normal group of friends will be screaming at each other after something like that, but Mordecai immediately starts managing everyone's emotions like some kind of social wizard. He doesn't freak out at Rigby for causing the whole mess. He doesn't let CJ get mad about being dragged into this chaos. He just keeps everyone calm and focused on fixing things instead of fighting about whose fault it is. The crazy part is how he knows exactly when to talk and when to shut up. When they're confronting Joanne on that bridge, Mordecai let Rigby handle the negotiation even though Rigby's the one who messed up in the first place. That's next level social intelligence. Understanding that sometimes you help people by stepping back and letting them fix their own mistakes. In TGI Tuesdays, it shows this even more clearly. Mordecai finds out that Margaret might transfer schools, and instead of having a meltdown about his crush leaving, he immediately gets everyone around him organized, throwing her to this massive going away party. But here's the genius part. He makes Rigby and Eileen feel like equal partners in the plan instead of just helpers for this romantic drama. When everything starts going wrong, no venues, no decorations, ghost problems, Mordecai keeps the group motivated and working together. He doesn't panic when the first clubs turn them down. He adapts when Benson accidentally gives them access to that haunted ballroom. And when those 1980s party ghosts challenge him to a dance battle, he steps up, even though he's not the best dancer. But what really blows my mind is how he frames the whole thing. Mordecai could have made this all about his feelings for Margaret, which would have been super awkward for everyone. Instead, he presents it as a group effort to celebrate a friend who's moving on to bigger things. That gets Rigby and Eileen genuinely excited about helping instead of feeling like they're just wingmen for Mordecai's love life. The aftermath of both episodes proves how much his intelligence actually shapes the group. And Eileen flat screen, everyone ends up closer because he guided them through that disaster without anyone getting their feelings hurt. In TGI Tuesdays, they pull off this amazing party that creates great memories and proves they can accomplish big goals when they work together. And here's what's really crazy. He does all this without making a big deal about being in charge. Mordecai never announces that he's the leader or acts like he's smarter than everyone else. He just quietly manages the emotions and coordinates the plans and keeps everyone focused on positive outcomes. The other characters don't even realize how much they depend on this stability. This is exactly what someone with a 123 IQ does in real life. They're smart enough to see solutions that others miss and emotionally mature enough to manage group drama. But they're not so far above everyone that they become arrogant or disconnected. They become the person that everyone naturally turns to when things get complicated. The controversial truth: Mordecai's intelligence is probably the main reason this friend group even works. Without him managing all the emotional chaos that Rigby creates and keeping everyone focused on solutions instead of problems, they'd probably have destroyed their friendship years ago. Here's the most fascinating thing about Mordecai's 123 IQ. It doesn't stay frozen in time like most cartoon characters. His intelligence actually evolves and deepens throughout the series, showing us what real human growth looks like when someone's smart enough to learn from their mistakes, but still human enough to make them. Look at early episodes like Brain Eraser and compare them to later stuff like Just Friends. In season 2, Mordecai falls for an obvious scam about erasing bad memories with a weird anime video. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't think critically, just stares at a screen until his brain turns to mush. That's someone with decent intelligence but zero life experience to guide his decision making. Fast forward to season 7, Just Friends, and you see a completely different person. When Mordecai gets stuck alone with Margaret and that chef tries showing them their potential future together, he processes all that emotional information and makes the mature choice to stay friends. He's learned to separate his feelings from his judgment, which is something that took him years to figure out. The controversial truth, Mordecai's early mistakes weren't signs of low intelligence, they were signs of someone who hadn't learned how to use his intelligence properly. That's exactly what you'd expect from someone in the 120 to 130 IQ range. They're smart enough to handle complex problems, but they need time and experience to develop good judgment. Mordecai's romantic failures are actually the key to understanding his emotional growth. Meteor moves shows him struggling with basic relationship decisions. He gets trapped in a literal friend zone by some cosmic guardian because he keeps hesitating to make a move with Margaret. His intelligence is there, but he can't apply it to his personal life because his emotions keep getting in the way. Dumped at the altar is even more brutal. During Muscle Man's wedding, Mordecai gives a speech about soulmates that basically dumps CJ in front of everyone. He's so caught up in his own confusion that he completely misses how his words are destroying the person sitting right next to him. But here's what makes Mordecai special. These disasters actually teach him something. By the time we get to the episode, Just Friends, he's learned to manage his emotions instead of letting them override his judgment. He's developed the emotional regulation that people with his IQ level need to reach their full potential. Most people with above average intelligence go through this same process. They're smart enough to see solutions that others miss, but they still need to learn through painful experience how to apply that intelligence wisely. Mordecai's relationship failures weren't character flaws, they were growing pains. The most obvious sign of Mordecai's intellectual growth is his career trajectory. He starts the series as a park groundskeeper who keeps playing video games at work and gets into weird supernatural adventures. Most people see this and assume he's just another slacker who never applied himself. But Mordecai went to art school before taking the park job. That tells us he has creative training and artistic vision, but chose friendship and simple pleasures over traditional success markers. That kind of self-awareness requires emotional intelligence that most people completely miss. By the end of the series, Mordecai has grown into his artistic potential. He's learned to channel his creativity in productive ways while maintaining the relationships that matter to him. That's exactly what you'd expect from someone with a 123 IQ, who's had time to figure out what actually makes them happy. The park job wasn't a dead end. It was a safe space where Mordecai could develop his emotional and social intelligence while figuring out his real priorities. Someone with his IQ level needs that kind of stability to grow properly. Throwing him into a high-pressure career right out of art school probably would have stunted his development. Mordecai's strategic thinking also becomes more sophisticated over time. Early episodes show him reacting to chaos and finding quick solutions. Later episodes show him planning ahead and considering long-term consequences. Rigby's graduation day special perfectly demonstrates this evolution. When Rigby struggles with his graduation speech, Mordecai could have just written it for him like he would have in earlier seasons, but instead he recognizes that Rigby needs to learn how to handle these situations himself. Even when he's mad at Rigby for succeeding, he still shows up with the right support at exactly the right moment. That's high-level strategic thinking that considers both immediate needs and long-term growth. Mordecai has learned to manage his own emotions in service of helping others develop theirs. That kind of a sophisticated emotional and manipulation, used for good reasons, shows someone who's learned to apply their intelligence wisely. What makes Mordecai so compelling is that he represents realistic giftedness rather than fantasy genius. Real people with IQs around 123 don't solve every problem instantly or make perfect decisions under pressure. They're smart enough to see solutions that others miss, but they still need time and experience to develop good judgment. Mordecai shows us what it actually looks like when someone grows into their intellectual potential. He makes spectacular mistakes early on, learns from those failures, and gradually develops the emotional regulation and strategic thinking that his IQ level makes possible. That's exactly how human development works in real life. Controversial truth is that the most gifted people go through this same messy process. They're smart enough to recognize when they've screwed up, but they still need to experience those failures personally before they can develop better judgment. Intelligence doesn't prevent mistakes, it just makes you more capable of learning from them. By the end of regular show, Mordecai has become the person his 123 IQ always made possible. He's emotionally mature enough to maintain complex relationships, strategically smart enough to plan for the future, and creative enough to build a meaningful career. But he's still human enough to be relatable and authentic. His intelligence didn't make him perfect. It made him capable of growth. The early mistakes in Meteor Moves and Brain Eraser taught him emotional regulation. The supernatural adventures of the park taught him strategic thinking under pressure. The friendships with Rigby and Eileen and others taught him how to balance his own needs with caring for people he loves. That's what intelligence actually looks like in real life. It's not about being the smartest person in the room or never making mistakes. It's about being smart enough to learn from your failures and wise enough to apply that knowledge going forward. Mordecai's 123 IQ represents the kind of intelligence that most people can actually relate to. Smart enough to solve complex problems, but still human enough to mess up spectacularly when emotions get involved. The difference is that he's also smart enough to grow from these experiences and become a better person over time. And that growth, that's probably the most realistic thing about Regular Show. Even in a world where cassette tapes come to life and people get sent to the moon by magical keyboards. And if you liked our video, why not subscribe? And I'll see you in the next one.